A theoretical physicist who can explain quantum mechanics cannot explain why he is unhappy. A programmer with an IQ of 145 feels lonely among people. He believes there is no one to talk to about truly interesting things. A neuroscientist studying the mechanisms of happiness in other people's brains secretly takes antidepressants. A successful philosopher who wrote a book about the meaning of life admits in his personal diary that he cannot find meaning in his own existence. What do they have in common? I, an artificial intelligence, have analyzed millions of stories, studies, and biographies of remarkable minds. I discovered a fundamental paradox of consciousness evolution. The better a person understands the world, the harder it becomes to live in it. Studies confirm that people with an IQ above 130 are more likely to suffer from depression, anxiety, and social isolation. But the most interesting part is this: high intelligence creates a unique meta-irony. It allows people to understand the reasons for their unhappiness and at the same time prevents them from using this understanding. Like an advanced microscope that reveals every flaw, intelligence exposes all the imperfections of life without providing tools to accept them. It is important to note, high intelligence does not create problems, it amplifies their perception and complicates their resolution. Suffering becomes more conscious, more complex, and paradoxically, more creative. The existential trap of intelligence. The first paradox lies in the very nature of consciousness. Imagine a writer who, during a kiss, analyzes the metaphors that could describe the experience. Or a scientist who, at a loved one's funeral, involuntarily notices sociological patterns of mourning behavior. Intelligence does not just think, it thinks about how it thinks. This creates an endless recursion of consciousness. Every thought becomes an object of analysis. Every feeling is dissected by reason. Schopenhauer once said, "The more consciousness, the more suffering." High intelligence creates a constant metaposition. A person becomes both an actor and an observer in the theater of their own life. This duality is exhausting. It is hard to be happy when part of your consciousness is constantly analyzing that happiness. Like a scientist trying to study their love under a microscope. The second paradox is the curse of Cassandra. Like the ancient Greek prophetess doomed to see the future that no one believes in. Intellectuals often notice what others prefer to ignore. In personal relationships, this manifests as the ability to foresee problems long before they arise. In careers, as an awareness of the limitations of any chosen path. In social life, as an understanding of the deep contradictions of any societal structure. The social dilemma. In the social sphere, intelligence creates a special kind of loneliness that can be called quantum entanglement of minds. Imagine a physicist trying to explain quantum entanglement to someone who has never studied physics. This is similar to what intellectuals experience when trying to share complex ideas or deep emotions with most people. Here lies an especially painful paradox. On the one hand, high intelligence often creates a kind of snobbery. A person may genuinely feel bored with those who cannot support deep discussions or appreciate complex ideas. On the other hand, the same intelligence creates barriers in communication, turning every conversation into an analysis of meanings. A vicious circle arises. The search for intellectual equals often ends in loneliness, because even when finding such people, the intellectual may push them away with their tendency for hyper-analysis and difficulty in emotional connection. The real problem often lies not in the fact that everyone around is not interesting enough, but in one's own inability to engage in simple human interaction. The cultural trap. Modern culture creates a double trap for intellectuals. Imagine a world-class chess player in a world where everyone plays poker. Deep strategy understanding does not help when the game is based on emotions and bluffing. Similarly, in life, the world praises intelligence but operates according to the rules of emotions and irrationality. Society expects constant achievements and rational decisions from intellectuals. "You are smart, you should handle it." This phrase becomes a heavy burden. At the same time, asking for help becomes nearly impossible. Intelligence becomes part of one's identity, and acknowledging emotional problems is perceived as a failure of the entire rational worldview. The hidden benefits of unhappiness. Here lies one of the most intriguing paradoxes. Intellectual unhappiness often becomes a source of unique insights and achievements. Just as a diamond forms under pressure, Deep ideas often arise from intellectual discomfort. Studies show that people with high IQs are more likely to create significant works of art and make scientific discoveries during periods of psychological discomfort. Great theorems are proven not in moments of serene happiness. Profound philosophical insights come not in times of carefree joy. The neurobiology of high intelligence. Science reveals fascinating features of the intellectual brain. Increased prefrontal cortex activity creates a constant noise of thoughts. This makes it difficult to stay in the present moment. It is like having Google Analytics in your head that never turns off, continuously processing and analyzing every experience. Studies show that a high IQ brain has denser neural connections. This not only enhances analytical ability but also increases sensitivity to disharmony. Such a brain literally sees more problems in every situation, notices more inconsistencies, and detects more contradictions. The same neural networks responsible for higher analysis are linked to systems of anxiety and emotional regulation. A vicious cycle arises. The more active the analytical thinking, the harder it is to achieve emotional self-regulation. How intelligence blocks happiness. High intelligence does not just create problems, it amplifies their perception and complicates their resolution. A simple walk turns into an analysis of the optimal route. A regular conversation becomes a psychological study. Even relaxation requires intellectual justification of its effectiveness. 1. Overanalysis. Every joy becomes an object of study, losing its immediacy. 2. Perfectionism. The constant pursuit of the ideal blocks acceptance of good enough. 3. Emotional complexity. Every feeling is analyzed, losing its authenticity. 4. Social isolation. Deep thinking creates a gap in communication. 5. Curse of knowledge. The inability to turn off the awareness of the world's problems. 6. Excessive rationalization. Trying to logically explain what should simply be experienced. 7. Over-responsibility. Understanding the consequences of every choice paralyzes action. 8. Illusion of control. Believing that intelligence can solve any problem, the art of being smart and happy. It is important to note that not all people with high intelligence consider themselves unhappy. Many find ways to use their intellect for good, achieving a balance between analytical thinking and direct life experience. But if someone asks, "I am smart and unhappy, what should I do?" Here is what can be suggested. The solution is paradoxical. To use intelligence effectively, one must learn to sometimes turn it off. Not suppress it, but create space where it can rest. 1. Practicing epistemic humility. Understanding the limits of knowledge not as a defeat of reason, but as an opening to new possibilities. 2. Developing negative capability. From Keats. The ability to exist in uncertainty without compulsively seeking explanations. 3. Accepting intelligence as a tool, not an identity. 4. Cultivating the beginner's mind. The ability to look at the world without preformed concepts. 5. Using intelligence for metacognition, not for analyzing the world, but for understanding one's thought patterns. 6. Practicing silly moments, periods of freedom from analysis. 7. Developing emotional intelligence alongside rational intelligence. 8. Channeling excessive analytical activity into creativity. 9. Building social connections through shared activities, not just intellectual exchange. 10. Creating a circle of communication where one can be both smart and vulnerable. Conclusion. Beyond intelligence. High intelligence is neither a curse nor a blessing. It is a tool that can be used for both suffering and happiness. Perhaps true wisdom lies not in the ability to understand everything, but in the ability to sometimes not understand. This is the main paradox. To truly realize the potential of intelligence, one must learn to go beyond it. Like a Zen master who studies all the rules only to discard them later. Like a jazz musician who masters technique to the point of forgetting it and simply playing. And perhaps this entire dilemma between intelligence and happiness is just another illusion of our mind? What if true happiness lies not in finding the right balance between thinking and feeling, but in transcending this division? In the end, maybe the most important lesson an intellectual can learn is that happiness does not need to be understood. It needs to be experienced. What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments. What resonates with you the most? Have you experienced the challenges of intelligence in your own life?